Carcer City is one of the most infamous places in gaming. It made Manhunt the game it is today. Disturbing, controversial, and banned. Even though the city might appear normal to any outsider, what lies beneath is nothing short of wicked. Manhunt, released in November 18, 2003 for the PlayStation 2 system, is a third-person horror game where a death row inmate has been given a second life to survive and make it out alive. But things get messy as he discovers the wicked ways of survival and that the price for the second life is very brutal. In this video, I will be explaining the disturbing theories iceberg of Carcer City from Manhunt, where we will take a look at the residents of the city, the role it plays, and how it became what it is today. Let's make one thing clear so that moving forward things make more sense. Both Grand Theft Auto and Manhunt games are in a shared universe, meaning GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas is connected with Manhunt. In GTA 3, during a Lips 106 radio news, we get to hear that Carcer City is nearby Liberty City.
So I'm sitting here reading the Liberty Train, and it says, in nearby Carcer City.
This means that along with Claude, all the other characters from Grand Theft Auto 3 knows what is going on in Carcer City. It is definitely possible that a bunch of employees who were connected with the Snuff ring of Carcer City might have escaped to Liberty City due to the cities being close to one another. Not to mention, Liberty City has its own share of gangs dominating their turfs, and the stragglers of the Snuff ring might have been good fit for the gangs because of their experience. Also, the protection it gives them, because once they work for the gangs in Liberty, the cops will basically ignore them as they don't stop the gangs from dominating their turfs. But regardless of that, it makes a lot of sense that after the ring got exposed to the world, the stragglers would have escaped to Liberty City so they may never get caught and hide in plain sight. I said it before that GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas is connected to Manhunt. The reason for that is because not only Carcer City is mentioned or referenced in these games, but also GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas are connected to each other as they are the 3D era of the GTA franchise. However, in order to maintain the ability to further parody real life and separate art styles, Rockstar felt the need to separate the timelines and universes of the 3D era GTAs from the HD era, which includes GTA 4, 5, and 6. In GTA Online, during the Los Santos Drug Wars update, Rockstar added some new characters and one of them is Mutt. Mutt is the NPC you go to and order supplies for your acid. However, if you actually pay attention and look at his back, you will see that he has a tattoo of Piggsy. Keep in mind that Manhunt 1 doesn't technically exist in GTA Online, as it is the multiplayer of GTA 5, which is part of the HD era of GTA instead of the 3D era. Rockstar did add a bunch of clothing from Manhunt 1 in GTA Online, but these are simply meant to be references to make the old fans happy. However, putting a tattoo on the back of Mutt questions the legitimacy of the separate universe theory. It could be that Manhunt's story and events did happen in GTA Online's timeline and Piggsy became a legend in the underground community, which is why Mutt has a tattoo on his back. Another theory goes in line with the idea that this game is indeed separate from from Manhunt, and that the events of the 3D era games, including the 3 GTA games, are movies set in the universe of the HD era GTA games. This theory actually comes from one of my commentators, Esknod, who says, could it be that 3D universe games are movies in the HD universe, and the movies just happen to have the famous gun store Phil Cassidy's cameo in GTA Vice City? Of course, if this was the case, then Phil's ammunition in GTA 6 existing would mean it's a product of a movie, which is Vice City and Vice City's stories. But if they are not movies, then the only explanation to this is that Rockstar thought having the tattoo on his back just made him look cool as a character, and there really isn't anything else going on. Either that, or it was just a developer oversight. After going into prison for committing crimes, James Earl Cash is awaiting death row. However, as soon as he is supposed to be killed, he is being injected with a substance that only knocks him out. After a couple of hours, he wakes up and gets to communicate with Starkweather. Starkweather then tells him that he is going to be okay as long as he hears what Starkweather tells him to do, which is to kill all the hunters who are looking for him. Cash had no idea or knowledge that he was being put into a snuff ring, but slowly and surely, he started to get the idea. It would appear that Starkweather chose his candidate quite well, if not too well, as this would eventually become Starkweather's downfall late in Manhunt. Having great natural talent in combat, Cash displays no outward emotion or regret, calmly butchering his pursuers with melee weapons, and is no stranger to violence. Cash is shown to be very capable of making sure his enemies are dead, and his executions are nothing short of brutal. Alongside melee combat, he's also quite comfortable with using firearms and is proficient in gun battles, no matter how numerous or dangerous the hunters are themselves. Simply put, James Earl Cash is a highly skilled and experienced assassin. Cash remains rather emotionless and completely fearless throughout most of the storyline and during gameplay. He is an expert stealth tactician, able to easily lose, hide from, and sneak around the most proficient of hunters, remaining completely calm as he targets to kill them from the shadows. However, he does display some sympathy for his kidnapped family members during Strapped for Cash and is furious when he sees them killed.
Run as far away as you can.
You must understand, Cash. I could never let them go. Where were your family when you were facing your final moments in the chamber anyway? You've left your old life, your old self behind. I'm all the family you need now.
Despite usually showing a lack of fear, Cash does appear considerably afraid when facing the Cerberus and when surrounded by the CCPD's SWAT in some cutscenes. In those cases, however, regardless of any weapons the player obtains in the level, Cash is strangely almost always completely unarmed and usually caught off guard, and therefore unable to defend himself against the heavily armed hunters. Cash is an extraordinarily dangerous individual. Alongside being proficient at stealth, he is capable of easily inflicting fatal injuries using even the most simple, everyday objects such as the plastic bag or wire, and is equally skillful with military firearms such as the assault rifle or shotgun, the other end of the weapon spectrum. He's also physically strong, able to carry heavy objects with a minimal struggle. However, this doesn't mean that he had no emotions at all. As stated, when Starkweather gets a hold of Cash's family and then kills them all, Cash visibly gets angry and as a result throws the TV where it is revealed to him. That is also the moment it got crystal clear to Cash that he cannot trust Starkweather at all and that he needed to take revenge. This begs the question, who is James Earl Cash? We are never told why he exactly went to prison, but his acting performance definitely paints a picture that he probably was an efficient killer who got caught during a job or killed an officer and went to prison for it with a death sentence. He kills a total of 464 people in the snuff making, which ironically made him the most dangerous individual out of all. In the UK, the game was linked to the murder of Stephen Pecura, 14, by his friend Warren LeBlanc, 17, on the 27th of February 2004. Giselle Pecura, the victim's mother, claimed that LeBlanc had been obsessed with the game after he pleaded guilty in court. During the subsequent media frenzy, the game was removed from sale by some vendors, such as the UK and international branches of Game and Dixon's, leading to significantly increased demand both from retailers and on the internet auction sites. The police denied any link between the game and the murder, citing drug-related robbery as the motive. The presiding judge also placed sole responsibility with LeBlanc in his summing up after sentencing him to life. It was later discovered that LeBlanc didn't actually own the game, but Pecura did. In an article published by The Standard at 12 April 2012, this is what they reported on the controversy. Two high street chains have removed all copies of a controversial video game from their shelves after it was blamed for the murder of a schoolboy. Dixon's and Game announced their decision following publicity over the case of 17-year-old Warren LeBlanc, who was jailed for killing a 14-year-old boy and was reportedly obsessed by the game. LeBlanc repeatedly battered Stephen Pecura with a claw hammer and stabbed him to death after luring him to a local park. The 17-year-old pleaded guilty to murder at Leicester Crown Court yesterday. Outside the court, Stephen's parents said LeBlanc of Braunston Frith, Leicester, had mimicked the game Manhunt, in which players score points for violent killings. His mother Giselle claimed her son's inherently evil murderer was obsessed with the game and called for it to be banned. However, others have insisted there is no link between video games and violent behavior, as well as pointing out that the game was only certified for sale to people aged 18 or over. Mrs. Pecura, 36, said, "I think that I heard some of Warren's friends say that he was obsessed by this game. If he was obsessed by it, it could well be that the boundaries for him became quite hazy. I can't believe that this sort of material is allowed in a society where anarchy is not that far removed. It should not be available, and it should not be available to young people. The game was banned by censorship officials in New Zealand 6 months ago. Manhunt was described by its promoters as a sadomasochistic game in which players gain extra points depending on the viciousness of their killings." The court heard how LeBlanc armed himself with 2 weapons and killed his victims in cold blood, having persuaded him to go to nearby Starkwoods Park, known locally as the Dumps, to meet 2 girls. He confessed to the killing when found covered in blood by 2 police officers shortly afterwards. Peter Joyce QC, prosecuting, told the court that the defendant had planned to rob his younger friend to help repay a drugs debt. Mitigating, Rod Price said LeBlanc was a happy boy and popular pupil, had received good reports from teachers, and had never before been in trouble with police. A spokesman for the Entertainment and Leisure Software Publishers Association said, "We sympathize enormously with the family and parents of Stephen Pecura. However, we reject any suggestions or association between the tragic events in the Midlands and the sale of the video game Manhunt. The game in question is classified 18 by the British Board of Film Classification and therefore should not be in the possession of a juvenile. We would also add that simply being in someone's possession does not and should not lead to the conclusion that a game is responsible for these tragic events. We would emphasize the need for all parents to be aware of the guidelines and ratings which apply to all games. Whilst we cannot comment on behalf of the publisher of the game in question, the procedures that it adopted were entirely responsible and in line with legal and industry codes of practice." The library first appears during Road to Ruin, where James Earl Cash is instructed by the director to make his way to the building's cellar, which is patrolled by the Hoods. The building has 3 floors, however, only the cellar is accessible. The cellar features some corpses hanging from the ceiling, a pile of bricks, and a few crates. Walking normally on the pile of bricks will cause noises and can be heard by the hoods. The ground level and second floor of the library can be seen through the hole on the ceiling. A couple of spotlights are available on the ground level. This place appears in the game on a much earlier level, but it is also one that stands out from the rest. Even though the only accessible part of the building is the underground, you can still see that there are other parts of the building which were meant to serve the player and take part in the gameplay, but for whatever reason got cut out of the game, probably due to time constraints. What's interesting about it is that there is an unfinished window which cannot be seen from the outside of the building, suggesting that you could have gone to the building next to the library in a prior build of the game. However, even though the players cannot get up there, for some reason the developers hid rats in this part of the building. It begs the question, what happened to the library? There are no furniture like bookshelves or books for that matter. The entire building is completely isolated and the only remains are rubble and these dead bodies, along with some crates containing heavy objects. And this leads us to the next entry of the Iceberg. Throughout Carcer City, rats are always present. It is theorized that Starkweather has infested the sets of the Snuff with rats so that they can add more detail to the product and make the films be more grime. But another theory is that he never infested the city with rats. He only filmed Snuff, and the residents of the city committed crimes of murder. At a certain point, the crimes got so out of control that as a result, it gave birth to a lot of dead bodies. And those dead bodies ultimately attracted rats, which paints a much more disturbing picture than just rats being infested due to the Snuff being produced. This is further supported by the fact that every time you leave a dead body around, crows and rats gather as they scavenge the place for food. Rat infestation doesn't just happen out of nowhere. This begs a question: how long the city has been in this state of hopelessness? How long have things remained this way? It has to be very long, since the entire city and even the buildings are infested with rats, and they are huge too. Donald Love is a side character who appears in the 3D GTA games. He used to be in the real estate business with Avery Carrington. He had connections with Cortez as well because he attended the parties Cortez used to throw and invite the big players of Vice City to. Donald Love is a very disturbed individual because not only he has no remorse for others at all, he also only cares about his enjoyment over everything else, which led him to become a cannibal. He enjoys eating human flesh very much and shows delight while doing so. His nature is revealed during a cutscene in the mission campaign in GTA Liberty City Stories.
Antonio, que pasa, amigo?
You do know I'm Italian, don't you, Don? Not, Spanish?
Of course. How silly of me. I just love all the Romance languages. My God, this is good. It tastes just like chicken, but somehow more, sentient. You want some?
I already ate, thanks.
Ugh, too bad. It's fantastic. I have some more delicacies about to be served. The liberals would have a field day, of course, but how little they know of life's real pleasures. Sophistication and democracy have always been such uneasy bedfellows.
So why would a man like Donald Love be connected with Carcer City at all? Well, for a lot of reasons. Mainly due to Carcer being close to Liberty City where Donald Love lived, but also due to the Snuff ring and decline of Carcer City in line with the lifestyle Donald used to live. It's a theory that suggests that Donald Love might have had a connection with Carcer City, as dead human beings were always available in Carcer City and would have been an easy source of food, which is illegal in Liberty City. There is another theory associated with Donald Love, but we will talk about it later in the Iceberg. However, it is very believable that at some point in his life, he had some form of connection with Carcer City, and who knows, he probably knew about the Snuff ring and might have enjoyed consuming such content too. Seeing as he eats human flesh, it wouldn't be too much of a shocker that he would also enjoy watching real murders and torture in a film format. I always thought to Donald, it was never the fact that these things were taboo which made it enjoyable to him. It was the fact that these things were simply his liking which made them attractive. Darkwoods Penitentiary is a large prison located in the Darkwoods district of Carcer City, specifically created for holding violent and deranged criminals from across the country. This facility housed a number of mentally ill individuals, who would later form the gang of Smileys after the prison's overthrow. Appearance-wise, the Darkwoods Penitentiary's exterior is similar to the real-life Ohio and Pennsylvania state penitentiaries. Darkwoods was a prison holding over 1,000 inmates from all over America, mostly murderers and the criminally insane. The prison also carries out death sentences in the form of the electric chair and lethal injection. The staff began taking bribes from Lionel Starkweather to use inmates in his Snuff films. In 2000, James Earl Cash was imprisoned here and sentenced to death as a death row inmate, and his execution took place 3 years later in 2003. However, as he was supposed to be executed by lethal injection, Starkweather bribes the staff to simply sedate Cash in order to free him instead, whilst the public believes James Earl Cash to be officially dead. Cash is set loose on a massive killing spree under orders of Starkweather. Meanwhile, the other inmates in the asylum broke free and killed all the prison guards. They form a dangerous gang called the Smileys, before eventually taking over and vandalizing the prison. Many bloodstains and graffiti texts can be found on the walls within the prison. Dead bodies, possibly orderlies or different inmates, can be spotted hanging from the ceilings. After wiping out several different gangs located throughout Carcer City, Starkweather eventually orders the Cerberus to bring Cash back here. Now that the prison is under complete control of the Smileys, the final pack for his Snuff film. Starkweather first orders Cash to kill a certain Smiley patrolling the tower, walk away, and bring his body to the prison's guard room. Next, Cash finds himself in a cell block, where he is forced to perform some violent and gruesome executions using a hammer and a metallic baseball bat. Then, Cash fights his way along the upper walkways into the shower block, killing many Smileys during gunfights. Cash soon runs into a white rabbit, which is a man dressed in a bunny suit. Starkweather orders Cash to follow him. The white rabbit leads Cash into many traps where the Smileys ambush him, but Cash ends up killing them in each one. Eventually, Cash reaches a workshop room where Starkweather finally finishes filming Cash for his Snuff film. He says the audience will love Cash and ultimately betrays him. The white rabbit is led outside, and Starkweather orders the remaining Smileys to kill Cash.
You did well, very well, but every film has an ending, and this here's yours.
What can I say? You are a good leading man. The audience will love you. Don't expect any royalty checks where you're going.
Cash, however, fights back and finishes off the gang entirely and heads outside. The white rabbit is shocked to see that Cash is still alive and runs away, hiding himself in a guard tower and arms himself with a shotgun. Meanwhile, the Cerberus have arrived to stop Cash in his tracks. Cash fights his way through the Cerberus up to the guard tower, killing the white rabbit and taking the prison key he was holding. More Cerberus has come to assist, but Cash kills all of them and finally uses the prison key to leave the Darkwoods Penitentiary. There is no doubt that Carcer City is just doomed, as there is little to no humanity left in the place. However, the theory that Carcer gives birth to criminals actually come from a different game. In GTA 4, you play as Niko Bellic, who just arrived to Liberty City. There are a lot of activities to do in this game, and one of the activities you can do is the vigilante missions from the older GTA games. In these missions, you would basically get in a cop vehicle and kill criminals for money. However, in GTA 4, you have to enter a police vehicle first and then use the touch computer in the car to find out the criminal you want to catch. It is here you will notice that some criminals are actually from Carcer City, which makes sense since the city has fallen and crimes are at an all-time high. However, because this is GTA 4, the events of Manhunt hasn't taken place in this universe, which means the Snuff ring probably hasn't happened, but crime is still going strong as more and more criminals are coming from Carcer City to Liberty even in 2008. In Manhunt, we play as James Earl Cash, who is forcefully placed in a snuff ring and has no choice but to kill in order to survive. However, this isn't the very first rodeo of Starkweather. He has been working as a snuff film director before this one. It just so happens that it was the last one he ever got to direct and ironically became a part of it too. But what happened to the actors who came before and played the role of James as a protagonist in their own films? Well, Valiant Video Enterprises were the distributors of the snuff directed by Starkweather. They have directed 15 of such films. They are Piggsy's Greatest Hits, Piggsy Bloopers, Hidden the Skins, Let's Play Ramirez Says, The Tramp Who Knew Too Much, Who Let the War Dogs Out, Skins Skills Tactics 101, White Rabbits Down the Hole, Starkweather's Ramrod Rodeo, The Hoods Take Carcer, CCPD Brutality Caught on Tape, War Dogs The Untold Story, Starkweather Behind the Scenes, White Trash Bash, Here, Bunny Bunny Bunny. Well, we will talk about Piggsy in the Iceberg later, but what happened to the others? Other than the tramp who appears as a side character in Manhunt, it is widely theorized that the others simply started to work for Starkweather or wasn't cut out for the job and was killed off by him in order to not leave any witnesses and keep the snuff ring a secret from the world. What also could have happened is that a lot of these actors left Carcer after the snuff ring got exposed and went to Liberty City or other places of America. Assuming the fact that the events of Manhunt does exist in GTA 5, a very popular theory on Reddit goes by that Michael probably knew about the snuff ring. Let me explain. In Grand Theft Auto 5, during the finale of the Polito score heist, when you enter the vehicle with the entire crew, a conversation starts between all of them, in which everyone talks about their first ever score. Michael is also asked when was his first ever score. He replies that it happened in the outskirts of Carcer City, and that it happened 25 years ago.
You ever hit a bank before, Franklin?
Yeah, I was the driver on the job my boy Lamar pulled. Guess it's the same kind of shit we doing now, right?
Nice, bro. What was the take?
Shit, I don't know, man. I can't remember.
Come on. Everyone remembers their first score.
Shit, not me.
Huh? Mikey, bro, what was your first bank score?
88, outskirts of Carcer City. Took a small franchise for 10G. Yeah, things were easier back then.
Yeah, 25 years ago. Jesus!
GTA 5 takes place in the modern day, which is 2013, which means Michael was in the outskirts of Carcer City during the year 1988. It is possible that the snuff business already existed in 1988, because it is speculated that Carcer has fallen long ago, so Michael knowing about it because of his first heist is definitely possible. It is also possible that he never talked about it because it was, in his perspective, nothing but a shocking incident that has happened a long time ago in his life. Not to mention, he was more cautious about Trevor returning into the picture and the heist life he was leading at that point. Another reason why he might have not talked about it at all is because he is a killer himself. He's a retired bank robber, so things like that doesn't bother him, and that's why he simply shrugged it all off. The last theory suggests that Carcer City isn't completely corrupted, as it might be a large city and the portion that takes place in Manhunt is simply one side of the city, and we haven't seen the other sides, which is also very likely why Michael never mentioned anything, because he never actually went to Carcer City itself. He was simply on the outskirts of the city. Gledson Gary Schaefer is a highly corrupted police chief of the CCPD. He never makes an appearance in person, but his voice can be heard during a phone conversation between him and Lionel Starkweather at the beginning of press coverage.
What? Are you fucking... Oh, shut up and get some of your boys to take care of it. Don't file the arrest report. Don't kill him either. Send both to me. Hey, remember who you're talking to, you son. Listen, you fuck. It's your job to clean up this city's mess. That's what you get paid for. Shit.
His name may be a reference to real-life cop turned serial killer Gerard John Schaefer. Gerard John Schaefer Jr. was an American murderer and suspected serial killer known as the Killer Cop, the Hangman, and the Butcher of Blind Creek, who was convicted of the 1972 murder and mutilation of 2 teenage girls in Port St. Lucie, Florida. He is suspected of up to 26 other murders. Described by prosecutor Robert Stone as the most sexually deviant person he had ever encountered, Schaefer was sentenced to 2 terms of life imprisonment at his 1973 trial to be served at Florida State Prison. He was stabbed to death by a fellow inmate while incarcerated at this facility in December 1995. Schaefer became known as the Killer Cop as he was a sheriff's deputy in Martin County, Florida at the time of his initial arrest. He also became known as the Hangman due to his favorite practice of binding restrained women to trees with a hangman's nose around their neck prior to their torture and murder. On the afternoon of July 21, 1972, Schaefer encountered 2 teenage hitchhikers named Nancy Ellen Trotter, 18, and Paula Sue Wells, 17, while on official police duty. He drove the pair to their intended destination of Stewart, although he cautioned the girls against the perils of hitchhiking. Upon learning neither girl was native to Florida and that the 2 intended to travel to Jensen Beach the following day, Schaefer proposed to drive them to the location. The girls accepted his offer and agreed to meet him at a bandstand on East Ocean Boulevard at 9:15 a.m. The following morning, Schaefer arrived at the bandstand at the prearranged time. On his occasion, he was not wearing his uniform and driving his own vehicle, although he convinced Trotter and Wells he was still on duty, having been switched to plainclothes, undercover duties, and thus driving an unmarked vehicle. Shortly after the girls entered the vehicle, Schaefer deviated from their intended route on the pretext of showing the girls an old Spanish fort. En route, he again briefly lectured the girls against accepting lifts from random strangers and the dangers of being sold into white slavery, before stopping the vehicle close to a dilapidated shed deep inside a remote wooded area, where he handcuffed and gagged the girls. He then took one victim to a large cypress tree close to the Indian River, tying her legs to the trunk just below her knees before binding a noose around her neck. Schaefer then took the other victim to another tree a short distance away. Both were informed they were to be raped and murdered. Those weren't the only crimes he committed. On September 27, 1972, Schaefer abducted 2 teenage friends named Susan Carol Place, 17, and Georgia Mary Jessup, 16, and there are further murders for which he is suspected for. On December 3, 1995, Schaefer was found stabbed to death on the floor of his cell. He had been stabbed over 40 times about the face, head, neck, and the body, with his throat also being slashed, his right eye destroyed, and several ribs fractured. His body was discovered after a fellow inmate informed staff of his death. Now let's get back to Gary. Gary Schaefer became chief of the Carcer City Police Department at an unknown time prior to the events of Manhunt. While in that position, he started to take bribes from Starkweather and in return gave him unlimited access to large selections of Carcer City for his Snuff projects. 2 years prior to the events of Manhunt, he was put on trial for corruption charges, but was found not guilty due to all the witnesses disappearing from the case. It's likely that he had them killed. After Cash kills Ramirez, Schaefer is contacted by Starkweather as a last resort and is ordered by him to capture Cash and a journalist who had recently been investigating the director's activities. By the end of the game, it is revealed that he got caught and pleaded not guilty.
Acclaimed movie maker Lionel Starkweather has been found dead today, along with several of his bodyguards, at his estate at the Wapona Hills residential district. In what investigators are calling a bloody vendetta, an unknown assailant infiltrated the compound, killing Starkweather, but more interestingly, leading police to the site of a snuff film ring being run from the estate's confines. Linked to this ring is Carcer City's own police chief, Gary Schaefer, whose lawyer stated that he intends to plead not guilty.
He is also talked about in GTA 3 as well in the radio Lips 106.
So I'm sitting here reading the Liberty Tree, and it says, in nearby Carcer City, a good day for law and order as Police Chief Gary Shaver was cleared of corruption charges in a controversial decision by the court. Let's hope those missing witnesses turn up safe and sound.
During the game, the players can come across stage props for the film they are taking part in. I have already talked about it a bit in the Carcer library section. Who are these people? But one thing to note is that these dead bodies are both a mix of old and new. This goes much deeper when Cash enters the penitentiary and the player can discover a lot more dead bodies, which are all covered in body bags. The reason Starkweather decided to have these dead bodies is because they all add to the film. You have to understand that these films are made for a special audience, so these dead bodies will make them satisfied. It shows that Starkweather has killed or were responsible behind the death of many people. A theory goes by that these dead bodies are the signs how Carcer City ruins everything in its wake, but to me it's a sign of Starkweather's crimes and how much his twisted mentality has played with his creativity when it comes to directing the Snuff films. Another theory suggests that some of these dead bodies were once actors like James himself who didn't survive and unfortunately met their demise, and as a result ended up facing such a cruel fate. This is what the official Manhunt website said about Carcer City. America is full of rundown, broken Rust Belt towns where nobody cares and anything goes. In Carcer City, nothing matters anymore and all that's left are cheap thrills. The ultimate rush is the power to grant life and take it away for sport. Carcer likely derives from the Latin word carcere, meaning to imprison, and carceral state, a state modeled on a prison. It is the figurative outline of an enclosure or prison cell and presumably also derives from the Latin carcere. Carcer was also the name of a prison in Rome in the ancient Roman Empire. Carcer was once a booming metropolitan with vast amount of industrial potentials. However, everything fell and now it's nothing but a husk. Abandoned, dark and out of sunlight. Makes you wonder, how does an entire city face such a fall? Especially in the modern day. With corrupt officers and cops roaming around the streets, Carcer has faced a decline so fatal that there is perhaps no more hope left for this city. This has been a long-running theory in the Manhunt community that some of the executions are most likely inspired by actual snuff. Snuff films are highly illegal to possess, which means if this was actually true, that means the employees of Rockstar Games had to have watched actual snuff films that were being made at the time. Not only they watched it, they must have also studied what truly made each of those tortures and murders so seducing to the viewers. They must have discovered that the more gruesome the scenes are, the more violence and suffering being inflicted to the victims, the better and more satisfying is the watching experience. However, this is a very difficult theory to confirm, because not only this would mean that they actually possessed real snuff films, which would literally mean they committed a crime, but also snuff films were a big myth and urban legend at that time, which means it was simply the idea that they exist and that they have a market in the dark or deep web. Of course, it isn't totally impossible since people of all manner and taste exist, but I highly doubt that Rockstar would go that far. After all, you don't have to experience everything in life in order to truly know their effects. Instead, what probably happened is that they used their imaginations when coming up with the executions and put animations that are very satisfying and fun to play with from the player's perspective. Not to mention, the more brutal you want to get, the longer it will take, which is a great way to balance the game, as the players simply cannot kill someone from an execution and then immediately hide. You also get higher style points if you blow off the heads of your enemies as well, which is satisfying to do so. That's why it is highly unlikely this theory is true. Mr. Nasty is the name given to a mysterious unseen character mentioned in the Valiant Video Enterprises catalog, which is the instruction manual for Manhunt. Mr. Nasty is the anonymous face of Starkweather's film business and is therefore believed to be the true mastermind behind Manhunt's events, although he is only mentioned in the instruction manual and never seen in the game itself. Mr. Nasty is the financial backer and producer of the Snuff ring under Valiant Video Enterprises. He sells all manner of things from gimp masks to snuff movies from the hunts. In the game's manual, references to Mr. Nasty are accompanied by a picture of a man in a Skeens hockey mask, who also appears on the game's cover art, though this is believed to be simply a generic artwork to hide his identity. He was also the one financing the Snuff films and worked as a producer, which is why it is theorized that he might have also sold the events of the game as a film itself. Here is him using a filter to hide his real voice and promoting his website to potential customers.
Valiant Video Enterprises. Real hardcore. Real fetish. Real brutal. Videos made to order. New members only interactive forums. Now at www.valiant-ent.tv.
His name is a possible reference to an incident that occurred in London in 1994, where a man named Tom Halloran was caught selling banned videos such as Faces of Death to children. The tabloid newspaper News of the World reported the story with the headline, "Mr. Nasty sells death videos to our kids." As this article was later reprinted in at least one book covering the British Video Nasty scare, Rockstar Games could conceivably have come across it in their research. Because of these events, Video Nasty became a commonly used colloquial term in the United Kingdom for straight-to-video films that featured extremely violent and sexual content, making it even more likely that this is an intentional reference and not a coincidence. Regardless of all this information, Mr. Nasty's fate remains a mystery to this day, and no one knows if he is still continuing the same business or not. Another theory that is very popular in the Manhunt community is that Donald Love might be Mr. Nasty. This theory does have some grounds to stand, but for you to understand that, I will talk about it in the next Iceberg entry. In Grand Theft Auto Vice City, you can find a shop in Little Haiti called Funeraria Romero and another shop behind it called Carnicero Romero. Funeraria Romero is a funeral shop while Carnicero Romero is a butcher shop. If you go behind Funeraria Romero, you can find that a grave is being dug and a skeleton is exposed, but the skeleton is missing a bone. And after that, if you go to Carnicero Romero, you can see that they are selling human organs in a box. There are already theories that people might go to Funeraria Romero for funerals, but after that is done, they take organs from the dead body and then sell them in the butcher shop to cannibals. This theory suggests that it is highly likely that Funeraria Romero is connected to Carcer City. After all, Carcer City has a lot of dead bodies that are rotting away and new dead bodies are available almost every night, which is why if Funeraria Romero is in the business of harvesting human organs, what better way to do that other than to go to the place where people are dying almost every day. It could be good for business and help them maintain a customer base for such an illegal venture. Not to mention, people like Donald Love exist in the game who is confirmed to be a cannibal that enjoyed eating human flesh, which is why he also must have been a customer of Carnicero Romero and had connections with Carcer too. He used to throw morgue parties as well and ate the flesh of people he worked for, which shows us what kind of a man he truly was. And that is why a lot of players think that Mr. Nasty and Donald Love are probably the same person. However, what I find contradictory here is that from the promotional materials, it seems that Mr. Nasty was aggressive when he talked, whereas Love has a very professional and radio man voice. He also talks as if he is very normal and a friendly person, which is a vibe you do not get from Mr. Nasty. But everyone has secrets, and who knows if Mr. Nasty was Donald Love's true or dual personality. Babyfaces are these individuals wearing a baby-like mask and roaming around hunting cash. There are two Babyfaces in the game and they go by Babyface 1 and Babyface 2. Babyface 1 wears the blue and green shirt unbuttoned and a member of the Innocents gang, while Babyface 2 wears a red one. Compared to the other Innocents, Babyface 1 is one of the more unique members, as he suffers from intellectual disability or possibly very low-functioning autism, effectively making him a child trapped in an adult's body, leaving him totally ignorant to the rest of his deplorable fellow gang members. He constantly mentions someone named Mr. Bunny, likely an imaginary friend. This disabled Babyface is seemingly just another gibbering lunatic left to wander the mean streets of Carcer City. On the contrast to his very childlike personality, he has a much darker side. He mentions collecting the eyeballs from his victims and constantly makes comments in his twisted, playful manner about the dubious plans he has for cash. Due to his mental illness, he speaks in a very childish manner. Although he can speak clearly to some extent, especially when he's angry, he mentions having to be fed, having to go potty. He also fails to comprehend the concept of death, as upon witnessing dead bodies, he asks them to get up and stop sleeping. Because of his very low mental age, he gets easily upset and angry, and also easily scared. For example, he cries for his mommy when he is afraid of cash. He sometimes talks to his imaginary friend Mr. Bunny and sings nursery rhymes to himself. He doesn't seem to be fully aware of Valiant Video Enterprises. He instead takes the entire hunt as a children's game, specifically hide and seek. Now let's talk about Babyface 2. Babyface 2 is a mentally deficient pedophile and murderer, serving as the leader of the Babyfaces. Like other Babyfaces, he wears a bloody doll mask, red shirt, and brown jeans. He's bad-tempered and always treats Cash as if he is his son. It is very likely that these individuals are born in Carcer City, and that's because there is a theory that suggests that Carcer City being the manifestation of hell itself.
Come on, you know Daddy would never hurt the apple of his eye. Why won't my baby boy come to me? I've got a surprise for you. Look, I've got it right here.
We know that the major cities in the GTA games are parodies of real life, which is why Liberty City is a parody of New York City, Los Santos is LA, and Leonida of GTA 6 is gonna be Florida. But what about Carcer City? It is said that Carcer is close to Liberty City, but we have no clue what that actually means, since saying close is not enough information. A theory suggests that Carcer City isn't a parody of any real-life city. In fact, is a representation of hell, which is why it doesn't represent any real-life city or state and doesn't parody them. While we cannot confirm or deny the theory, we can take a look at what inspired Carcer City. Another theory suggests that Manhunt came at a time when Silent Hill was a very popular horror franchise and was generally considered to be the most horrifying place in gaming, beating the places of Resident Evil games as well. And that's why Rockstar created Carcer, which represents the worst city of America and hell on earth. That's why everywhere you look, all you can find is dead bodies, shadows, flies, and guts. Everyone has abandoned the place and there is nothing left. Cops exist to protect the criminals and are pawns of Starkweather. There is another theory that suggests that Carcer has never seen the light of day. This theory is more metaphorical, as it's impossible for a city in America to never face daylight. Other than that, being an extreme caricature of a Rust Belt city, Carcer City appears to have taken inspiration from Detroit and Flint, Michigan, Camden, New Jersey, East St. Louis with Chicago, Illinois, and Gary, Indiana. In Grand Theft Auto 4, if you use the in-game internet at an internet cafe, you can stumble upon a user by the name DarkSoulLock in blogssnobs.org. It's a goth man who lives in Carcer City. Rather than telling you what is actually going on with this man, let us go through his posts. Updated 25 days ago, sex, male, username is DarkSoulLock, location Carcer City, and age 27. Profession, dead-end jobs. Appearance, purple hair, eyeliner, tight black pants, flouncy shirt, spikes, chains. Interests, death metal, furries, gaming, and conspiracy theories. I've been lying awake all night thinking about where barn owls used to live before barns were invented. I've got to be losing it. How about burrow owls? Why you would live in a burrow? Why not live in an elephant? I bought a whistling cattle from Save Ascent last week that doesn't friggin' whistle. I tried to return it, but they told me that they couldn't exchange because it had been used. How am I supposed to know that it doesn't whistle without using the damn thing? Everywhere I turn, people are out to get me. Danger lurks in the shadows and my body aches. I think that I'm dying. Has anyone noticed that there are sick people everywhere? I go to the doctors and people are sneezing all over me. Old women splutter over my neck in the line at the pharmacy. It's no wonder I'm a physical wreck. I've even started putting filters in my hand-rolled cigs, and I've already cleaned out my cologne 3 times this week. Not a pretty sight, I can tell you. I'm so messed up and it's only 9 a.m. Updated 29 days ago. I quit my job at 24/7 today. I hit a wall, physically and metaphorically. Just couldn't take any more of the constant questions. It's a $2 lasagna, for Christ's sake. Just buy the damn thing and leave me in peace to dwell on the horror of my existence. Bottom line is, talk shit, get hit. As for those f***ers who chat on cell phones when I'm ringing up their orders, they should all be rounded up and executed in the most gruesome way imaginable. The only person more annoying than my preppy roommate is his whining girlfriend. The face of a witch and a laugh to match. The noise is cutting into my head like a chainsaw. Someone should just shoot me in the face. I can't take much more. I need to get out, smoke some pot, go to the ocean and take a crap in it. That is peaceful. I'm sacrificing myself, or at least I try. It's not as easy as you think. Sleepwalking is so peaceful. Waking up is the problem. I definitely have health issues. Updated 18 days ago. I've decided to try to make amends with all the people that I've harmed. I apologize to the postman for the crossbow incident last week, and I'm going to give my sister a call later today. Ever since she found those pictures of rotting people on my computer, we have drifted apart. Also got a new job at the print shop down the street. Things are looking up. Finally, I will be able to make money. Updated 19 days ago. I'm back. I don't know if anyone reads my blog. I don't really care. It's better than sitting alone in my room eating my scabs. I've had this terrible fear all morning that I'm actually mentally ill, but nobody has told me yet, and everyone is just trying to act normal around me. I really need to get some sleep. As you can clearly see, every time we see someone from Carcer mentioned in GTA, it's almost always someone who isn't normal. This just adds to the theory mentioned before that Carcer gives birth to criminals and disturbed individuals. Piggsy is a deranged and cannibalistic mass murderer who wears a skinned pig's head over his head while viciously slaughtering victims with a chainsaw. Appearing to be an obese, naked, middle-aged man, he is almost completely inhuman in behavior and has lost all connection with reality. His mind has degraded into an animalistic or childlike state, as he seems to only be capable of speaking a few basic words and grunting like a pig. His dialogue also strongly implies he is mentally challenged. He is still smart enough, however, to use a chainsaw, run away from certain weapons aimed towards him, and to realize that stepping on a metal grate on the floor could be dangerous given his weight. Though he ultimately makes the mistake of stepping on it again, he's a remorseless killer, butchering all those who come across his path with his chainsaw. Because of this, Piggsy became Lionel Starkweather's star performer in his Snuff films and slaughtered dozens, if not hundreds, of runners prior to James Earl Cash. Between films, Starkweather kept Piggsy chained up in the abandoned attic of the estate while feeding him the remains of those who were killed in the films, which were delivered to him by Cerberus guards as a means of disposing of corpses. Despite the fact that they themselves were cold-blooded professional killers, many of the Cerberus operatives treated him with both genuine fear and disgust.
Starkweather, give me the key. Yes, sir. I want you to go down to the basement and turn off the motor. We can't be safe with these two bastards running around. We're on it, sir.
But how did he become insane? Sometime before the events of Manhunt, Piggsy was enlisted by Starkweather to perform in his Snuff film Ring. It is likely that Piggsy was James Earl Cash's predecessor in the Snuff movies filmed in Carcer City. Piggsy had a long and successful career in Starkweather's company, starring in such movies as Piggsy's Greatest Hits and Piggsy's Bloopers. However, he eventually became a liability due to his unpredictable and overly savage behavior, eventually falling out of Starkweather's favor. But as Starkweather still deemed Piggsy useful as a means of disposing of corpses, he decided to lock him away in the attic before employing Cash. There is a theory that suggests that Starkweather is the reason why Piggsy became the way he is now. He was a normal guy, but constantly being put into Snuff films made him commit degeneracy, which toyed with his psyche and made him lost his sanity. And this theory has a lot of grounds because it is very likely that being forced to kill people in brutal ways messed with him, and the way he could cope with it was by simply turning into a cannibal. That way he would be doing it for hunger, but it also turned him completely insane. Starkweather was once a successful Vinewood film director, until his movies started to flop badly and his professional career was finished. Later, he moved to Carcer City and developed an obsession towards morbid acts of violence. Soon, Starkweather began producing underground pornography and snuff films, which he sold to certain Japanese businessmen. His newfound success made Starkweather very rich, allowing him to open an illegal film company named Valiant Video Enterprises. Eventually, Starkweather began working with various criminals like Mr. Nasty and hired local psychopaths, including Ramirez, to serve him. Starkweather also employed a group of lethal mercenaries known as the Cerberus to serve as his personal bodyguards. At one point, Starkweather exacted his revenge on those who ruined his career by filming their murders in a video collection he entitled Director's Cut. Now a crime boss, the ex-movie director began paying off the CCPD police chief Gary Schaefer, allowing him absolute control over Carcer City and all the gangs participating in his snuff films. At one point, he purchased a 4-story mansion, which was designed by Las Ventura's planning department and built in Wapona Hills. With all this power in hand and indeed abusing it, Starkweather remained isolated in his mansion, watching everything through security cameras located throughout the city and paying people to do all his evil work. In the first of his snuff films in Carcer City, ironically called Manhunts, Starkweather employed Piggsy, who had become a successful star at slaughtering many runners. But due to Piggsy becoming insane, Starkweather needed a replacement, and thus began the events of the game where Cash is the chosen star. During the game, when the player kills enemies in brutal manner, sometimes it is revealed through Starkweather's voice lines that he finds the brutal executions sexually arousing, and thus he masturbates to it.
You just inspired me, Cash. Really have. Really doing it for me. I ain't been this turned on since... well, let's not go there.
Even though it isn't confirmed, it's highly theorized and is speculated that he is inspired by Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer and Charles Starkweather. Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as Milwaukee Cannibal, was an American serial killer and sex offender who killed and dismembered 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. Many of his later murders involved necrophilia, cannibalism, and the permanent preservation of body parts, typically all or part of the human skeleton. Although he was diagnosed with BPD, schizotypal personality disorder, and a psychotic disorder, Dahmer was found to be legally sane at his trial. He was convicted of 15 of the 16 homicides he had been committed in Wisconsin and was sentenced to 15 terms of life imprisonment on February 17, 1992. Dahmer was later sentenced to a 16-term of life imprisonment for an additional homicide committed in Ohio in 1978. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death by Christopher Scarver, a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. Charles Raymond Starkweather was an American spree killer who murdered 11 people in Nebraska and Wyoming between November 1957 and January 1958, when he was 19 years old. He killed 10 of his victims between January 21 and January 29, 1958, the date of his arrest. During his spree in 1958, Starkweather was accompanied by his 14-year-old girlfriend, Carol Ann Fugate. Both Starkweather and Fugate were convicted on charges for their parts in the homicides. Starkweather was sentenced to death and executed 17 months after the events. Fugate served 17 years in prison, gaining release in 1976. Starkweather was executed by an electric chair in 1959, which was the last execution in Nebraska until 1994. And that is why it's highly theorized that these two individuals are the ones that actually inspired Rockstar to come up with Lionel Starkweather's character. Hunters are the enemies that are preying on cash. The hunters are also known as gangs such as Hoods, Skins, War Dogs, Innocents, Smileys, Cerberus, Monkeys, CCPD, and SWAT. The Hoods are basically your average Joe who are getting in on it because of money. You can actually sometimes hear them talking about going home and dealing with an annoying wife. There is a theory that some Hoods might be off-duty cops, but this has never been confirmed. Because they are the least dangerous hunters, they appear as the first set of enemies in Manhunt. The Skins are a neo-Nazi white power gang. Overall, they tend to work as baboon packs and are very aggressive and willing to attack rashly. They partake in the hunt mostly for the sadistic violence. The Skins are disorderly and reckless. They are a hate group comprised of racist skinheads who adhere to a wide variety of white supremacist beliefs. Their turf is the Denton's City Junkyard. This is further shown by Rockstar introducing them in the scene called White Trash. A theory suggests that Starkweather actually liked some of their antiques because it might have aligned with his too, and that's why he hired them. This is what the strategy guide says about the War Dogs. Based in the neglected Carcer City Zoo, the War Dogs are the most dangerous and efficient killers on Starkweather's payroll. They consist of ex-military special forces and obsessive hunters for hire. A few members stay true to their military backgrounds and often communicate in special forces code phrases, but others lack actual knowledge, so they improvise. They're experts in both tactics and weaponry. Their preferred tactics are ambushes, baiting, and luring, and full-on frontal assaults. Despite their training, their animal instincts sometimes take over while pursuing prey, and they become noisy and highly excitable. Take no prisoners is their motto, and they hunt their prey with a viciousness matched by none. A theory suggests that these War Dogs used to be in the Carcer City Army Defense, but it's impossible to prove, as despite everything, we really don't know much about Carcer City as a whole. With the Innocents, I have some theories on Reddit suggesting that their title comes from their beliefs that they are innocent, and the behavior of Babyfaces do have some grounds to this theory, but they aren't the entire gang, so I wouldn't put all my chips on this one. Cut from the same cloth as James Earl Cash, the Smileys are the insane inmates of Darkwoods Penitentiary set loose by Starkweather that he may use them for his latest Snuff videos. Named after their off-putting smiley, masks, and facial paintings, the Smileys torture and murder their victims out of their irrational and inscrutable reasons and desires, making them all the more dangerous. They were gonna have a leader like the War Dogs having Ramirez, but it was completely cut out of the game. A theory suggests that it got cut out of the game because the leader was going to have a lot of similarities with Cash. The Cerberus are a private military and security company contracted by Lionel Starkweather as his personal bodyguards and organizers for his Snuff films. Some of the Cerberus mercenaries, including their very own leader, were former clandestine officers of the National Security Agency. Because of this background, one of their members claims to have expertise in anti-kidnapping and counter-espionage. The rank of sergeant exists within the Cerberus. A theory that ties them with GTA 5 suggests that after the Snuff fallout, it is possible that some of the Cerberus members actually went ahead and worked for Merryweather, which is a private military in GTA 5. And that is pretty much all the theories with the Hunters. Ramirez is the leader of the War Dogs. He's also one of the few bosses that you have to fight. He worked previously for Starkweather, and after he is killed by Cash, that's when Starkweather really starts to feel scared.
Where do you think you're going, man? Huh? Huh? What the fuck? You think you're tough? Think you're tough? I'll rip your fucking head off! Don't wanna play anymore? You like hide and seek? You like hide and fucking seek? Well, we're coming for you, asshole. What's the matter, little boy? Ready or not? It's our turn now. Run! Run! If you don't find him soon, I'll shoot you myself.
According to a very popular theory, he is inspired by Richard Ramirez. Besides borrowing his last name, the former's implied military background was also borrowed from the serial killer, who was taught skills in jungle warfare by his older cousin Miguel Ramirez, a Vietnam War veteran and a Green Beret who was just as violent. Richard would apply these skills that he learned to become the serial killer that he became during the early 80s in the USA. Another reason this theory might be true is because a TV film called Manhunt Search for the Night Stalker is based on the true story of Richard Ramirez and the cops who tried to track him down. Richard Ramirez was an American serial killer whose killing spree occurred in Greater Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area in the state of California. From April 1984 to August 1985, Ramirez murdered at least 14 people during various break-ins, with his crimes usually taking place in the afternoon, leading to him being dubbed the Night Stalker, the Walk-In Killer, and the Valley Intruder. He was convicted and sentenced to death in 1989 and died while awaiting execution in 2013 because of suffering from blood cancer. When he died, no one claimed his body, which is why he was cremated. I mentioned him already in the Iceberg I made before. However, something I have always found interesting about him is that when interviewed, he admitted that he simply was an evil person.
Ramirez refused to discuss his own crimes, but had this to say about serial killers.
A serial killer comes about by circumstances and like a recipe, poverty, drugs, child abuse. These things, contribute to a person, to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes.
Why did you kill those people?
No comments. I cannot answer that at this time. They are desires, whereas if I didn't give in to them, I would be crushed by them. I believe in the evil in human nature. This is a wicked world, and in a wicked world, wicked people are born. I'm not going to blame society, my race,
After completing the entire game and killing Starkweather, the Snuff ring gets exposed and Gary Schaefer pleads not guilty in court.
Cash, I made you!
However, after that, we get a post-credit scene where this footage is shown. This footage shows that the entire events of the game has probably been recorded as a snuff and sent to children. As you know, Mr. Nasty is still not out of the picture, which is why it is highly likely that the events of Manhunt would be a major success as a snuff film, and that would mean throwing away the footage of Cash murdering hunters is a waste when you can sell them and make money, which is why the events of the entire game are probably recorded and sealed as a film for children. But why? Well, I have already talked about this in the previous Iceberg, but there is a theory that suggests it is done so that Mr. Nasty would never run out of customers. Snuff films are films consumed by people who find the blood sport amusing and entertaining. As you can already imagine, most sane individuals will never find such films to be entertaining, but there are always troubled minds in society. The theory is that by showing the snuff to children, it would mess up their psyche, and they would grow up being attracted to such films, and that way the demand for these films would never go away. They plan to do it by hiding the snuff film in the VHS of legit films, because then they can sell them to kids without being caught. Not to mention, if the parents ever found out that these films are really not for kids, then they would simply take them away. There is no way to know that the violence depicted on the film is real, since every movie is acted. The idea that these are real violence that are being shown would never cross the parents' mind. But to children, they would appear very real, and in that way, they would grow up to be fans of snuff films. That is why Carcer City is obsessed with children. And that pretty much sums up the Carcer City Disturbing Theories Iceberg. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see more icebergs and lore videos on Rockstar titles, then make sure to subscribe and become a member of the channel to get early access to my videos than everyone else. Shout out to DSmoke TV for becoming a member and helping me with some creative decisions with this video. And former Rockstar developer who worked on Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, York Street Gaming, for giving me a huge shout out on his channel. And Name is Matt for providing me with content that helped me make these videos. And with that, Perfect Enrager signing out.
Perfect Enrager, what's up, man? Welcome to the chat. Did he just say he has 10,000 hours in GTA Online? Bless your soul. That's really cool, man. Holy crap.